Hello, everyone. Sherry Truhlar with Red Apple Auctions. Today, I want to talk about school auctions. Now, don't run anywhere. If you're a nonprofit, you'll get some jewels out of this as well. But the reason I'm focusing on school auctions is because tomorrow is my next conversation, completely free for 2 hours, talking about the future of school auctions. I know it's a busy time of year. Schools are wrapping up the year end. Annual campaigns are often wrapping up at June 30th. And so graduations, of course, all of that's happening. But we want to get this nailed down before summer and everybody takes off and goes on vacation. So we want to share the best of what we've learned and how we can carry it, really marry it to our best of our in-person events, so that as we move into hybrid events or figure out what we're going to be doing at our next gala, we're really utilizing the best we can from both formats. Now, I'm going to be joined by Star Sneed. She's a fundraising consultant, does a lot of work with schools, speaks regularly at the Case NAIS conference. We've got 3 clients that are joining us as well. 2 of them have held 2 virtual events, one in 2020, one in 2021. So they've got a lot of experience, twice as much as many groups. And they're all from different areas. We got the Midwest, we've got downtown in a big city, we've got the suburbs, we've got schools that are just for the youngest of children, we've got a Montessori school, we've got PK through 8th grade and so forth. So there's a lot of variety as to what they're going to be offering and what they see as what they enjoyed about the virtual world and what they're talking about as they move forward. What are they carrying forth in that? So again, join us tomorrow, June 16th, 2 to 4 Eastern. You can register. I'll include a link here so that you can follow that, probably down below here if you're watching this on YouTube. And then also, again, June 30th, we'll play the recording of that. And then Star and I will be live to have a discussion and answer questions. So tomorrow, everybody's live in a great studio. Oh, it's going to be a fun studio. We're going to have really cool interaction as far as the setup goes. In fact, this is something I've already been visiting with a nonprofit client about doing for their fall event. So if you're interested in checking that out, you'll be able to see some of the technology in that piece of it as well. But it's going to be a great discussion. And then on June 30th, we'll play the recording, and then Star and I will be live to ask questions. In fact, if you have a question, please submit that to info@redappleauctions.com, and I'll make sure to incorporate that in. We've had a lot of questions already coming in, so I'm kind of filtering them, figuring out what groupings they should be in so that we can get your questions about hybrid events answered as well. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is I read an article. It's from JWU, Johnson & Wales University, which I think is primarily known, or I know them as a culinary school, food and, they're big on hospitality industry. And so they'll put out research papers and articles and so forth tied to that. I think they're up in Rhode Island or Florida. I don't know. It's one of those two, for some reason, sticks in the back of my mind. And I read this article and I thought, oh yeah, this is what I kind of see with auctions in a different way. I'll share this with you and you can see. But it was interviewing and talking to different people who like restaurants. And they said, what did you like about what the restaurants did in 2020? What do you want to see them do carrying forward? And there were 3 things. Respondents said that they really liked the new open environments, like eating outdoors. They wanted that to continue. The next most popular change talked about the simplification of menus. Apparently, people felt a little intimidated by some of the menus, so they were simplified during the pandemic, and people liked that. And then lastly, diners hoped that the ability to order and pay remotely remained an option moving forward. He had also talked about several other things that I thought were interesting. So I'm going to share that, and then we're going to juxtapose this against school auctions. But he said, imagine if you have a fine dining restaurant and they have never done takeout before, because their whole premise is based on the fact that you go into this restaurant, you have a wonderful experience, great food, but it's just their dining experience. That's it. Well, during the pandemic, if they were going to survive, they had to change a few things. There was a restaurant that's not too far from me, offers great food, but right on their menu, when you'd go in, it would say, our food doesn't travel well. So therefore, don't ask for a doggy bag. We don't pack up our food and we don't do takeout. During the pandemic, they started doing curbside pickup. There would be a long line to go get their food so that you could take it home. They adapted. So other examples of how a fine dining restaurant, imagine if they were more all about in-person dining before, and then they made these changes, and how well positioned they are going forward. contactless takeout, if they added that in, third-party delivery, something like Uber Eats, Grubhub, adding in-house delivery, adding cocktails to go. Oh, on the in-house delivery too, they said what some of the restaurants got wise about is that when you are using Uber Eats or Grubhub, they don't get as much money. So what they started to do was offer better deals if you went to their website and you ordered directly. So to that end, they had to add in, for some of them, online ordering and payment systems to facilitate everything. So if they did that, they got more money to keep instead of giving it to some of these third-party vendors. Meal kits, cocktail kits. We did some of those in virtual galas. Off-premises retail sales. For instance, there is a great vegan restaurant. It's pretty casual. It's not fine dining by any means, but a great vegan restaurant in Washington, D.C. that I love their macaroni and cheese. So imagine if they were able to figure out how to put something together and that you can buy their mac and cheese at a retail site, either prepared or a meal kit that you're able to take home, whip together and have at your house. That's an example of, being creative and how to offer your food and get your branding out there. So I read all of those and I thought, oh man, we had some great ideas though that happen in school auctions too, that we should talk about. We will be talking about tomorrow and June 30th. But also as you think about your virtual event, if you did one, hopefully you did, and what you experienced. For instance, audience development was a big boon this year. We were able to have more outreach with our virtual events. Alumni were able to participate more easily. Grandparents, at our in-person events, sometimes the grandparents lived out of state. They didn't attend the auction, the gala, or sometimes even if they're in town, the parents gave the grandkids to the grandparents and said, hey, we're going to go out for the night to the school auction. You take care of the kids. But now grandparents are participating. Right? Maybe you've got divorced parents who never wanted to go because one of the other parents was going to be at the gala. Well, now they can both attend virtually. Nobody's going to run into each other. What about the children themselves being able to participate? In some of my virtual galas, we incorporated in activities specifically so children would be an active participant in the auction. That rarely happens at an in-person gala. More teachers and staff. We saw administrators, more people participating from the staff and administrators as well. We also saw a great chance to focus on the mission. I know that initially when like the early 2020, talking about how can we get people to pay attention? They're going to be in their house. They aren't going to have a curated experience where we are making sure that they've got the best lighting and the best sounds coming to them and just this ambiance that speaks to what we're trying to convey. They're in their house or they are where they are. We don't know where they are. Maybe they're their house. Maybe they're somewhere else. How are we going to capture their attention? Well, what we found was this actually was not a problem. We saw people who paid attention. We didn't lose them. Occasionally, I would see someone come back in the chat and make a donation and say, I'm so sorry, I was going to give it earlier, but I was called away or I went to the bathroom. But those things can happen at an in-person ballroom as well. My experience generally has been that guests have been great about watching the content to the point that on more than one occasion, I have had a client tell me, we had some people say, I didn't know that you did this program, or I didn't know the school had this, when in fact, we've talked about it in prior years, but it's a noisy ballroom. They're distracted by other things. They just never heard it. Now they're able to focus a little bit better. Lower operating costs. That would be nice to carry forward, wouldn't it? Food and beverage costs down, venue costs down, decor, pipe and drape costs down. What about staff time? I'm really curious to hear from our two schools who've done two different events now, two different virtual galas. The first virtual gala, I think for anybody, was really a time sucker because so many people had to get up the speed and that learning curve was really steep. But for those of us that did second galas, what was their learning curve like? How much staff time was devoted? Was it less than what they do for an in-person event? Was it the same? So that's one of the questions for sure. I want to talk to our two schools about who did an event in 2020 and again in 2021. So lots of great stuff is going to come out of this conversation. And again, if you've got a question, why don't you go ahead and submit that to info@redappleauctions.com. And I'll be grouping those together, like I said, so that we can get some cohesiveness around all of the questions that are coming in. I'm Sherry with Red Apple Auctions. As always, good luck to you in your gala.